it's
So
scuffed.
we are back here once again with another update for New World. This latest alpha patch went through this past week, and with it, another round of big changes for the game. It's actually getting to the point where I need to start coming up with better titles for my New World videos beyond it's another big update, because once again, it is. Anyway, they added the new Eastern-inspired endgame zone of Ebon Scale. Along with that also comes several new enemy types. We've got a new expedition called the Garden of Genesis, which is the second instance dungeon that we know of. This one, home to the Angry Earth, is filled with elemental protectors and has 2 boss encounters. On top of that,
this used to be an outdoor dungeon. It was really cool. I remember I did it. It was probably one of the coolest parts of the entire game. It was like this massive, gigantic, like earthen spire, and it had a boss up at the top of it.
First iteration of outpost rushes in the game. They've added voiceover for all of the main story quests. There are new ways to acquire weapon and armor sets while leveling, and there's about 10 pages of sweeping changes for every weapon in the game. So yeah, once again,
holy shit,
it's a big update. In fact, it's actually gotten to the point where it's starting to exceed my expectations for what they were actually going to be able to get done between the preview event last August and the upcoming release. I mean, these updates have been happening once a month, and we're still 5 months away from the planned August 31st launch. Now, ultimately, it's still up in the air if this game is going to be any good, or maybe even more importantly for MMO fans, whether or not it's going to have any longevity. But in the meantime, I think these updates are a really, really good sign. Like, this game is definitely headed, I think, in a good direction. So let's take a closer look at the new content, what's changed, and everything that's coming with this update. So first off, we've got some new content in Ebon.
So I'll say this. We could try to do an interview with like one of the New World devs, maybe in like a month or so, because that'll be about the same time that we'll probably get an idea of whenever, I think they already said whenever the next alpha is going to be, and just kind of ask them questions. I'll let you guys do, like, you know, you can give me ideas what you want me to ask, etc.
Scale reach. This was actually first teased in last month's update, and it's now officially in the game, the alpha version of the game. It's a brand new zone for players level 51 and above. This is located north of Monarch's Bluff and west of Brightwood. The land is filled with lush wetlands, waterfalls, high mountain peaks, and this Eastern-themed architecture. Now, the zone and the story behind it is that there's a fallen empress here who has built up a corrupted army, and what this means is actually we've got some new enemies in the game. This is called the Corrupted Dynasty enemy type, with musketeers, heavies, warriors, spear captains, summoners, and maidens, as well as...
That's really cool. Like, all of this is cool. One of the problems that New World has is the fact that so many of their mobs, there's probably, like, realistically about 30 different mob types in New World, and that's it. The entire game is populated by around 30 different mob types. It's too fucking many.
Tigers and corrupted tigers. Now, there have been no details on if or how these are going to be different from the other corrupted enemy faction that's already in the game. Hopefully it's going to include some unique mechanics to make combat interesting beyond just being visually distinct. Next, we've got the Garden of Genesis. This is the second instance dungeon in New World that we know about. The first one that we heard about last month, it was filled with this lost enemy faction. We saw a bit of gameplay and flyby footage for that. Now, this new one, the Garden of Genesis, is located in the northwest part of the Eden Grove crater, and is said to be the birthplace of the Angry Earth. So,
dude, that tower, going up that tower with my group was probably my favorite experience in New World. It was so cool. It was so bad. And then seeing the boss up at the top and fighting the boss, oh, it was fucking amazing. And the only thing that wasn't amazing is the boss kept despawning. Like, we spent like 3 hours trying to kill that boss, and then the next day I spent 2 hours on my main stream trying to kill that boss. It was so fucking stupid.
Players who enter this dungeon will have to face off against these elemental protectors as they attempt to purge a mysterious blight. Something that they noted here is that in order to actually enter the dungeon, you're going to have to complete 2 attunement quests. And I actually really like this. Like, it has some sort of a build up to going into the dungeons rather than just hitting a level requirement and then waltzing on in. I like whether or not it's going to be story or just scene setting or whatever, having these attunements to get into these dungeons is just, I kind of like that feature. Now, they also specified that the dungeon is going to feature 2 boss encounters. There's the Caretaker, who is a giant lurking in murky waters, and then the Blighted Greenskeeper, which is actually defending the heart of the garden itself. I'm assuming this is the final boss in this dungeon. Now, when we first heard about dungeons or expeditions,
the thing with the bosses in New World, like, we fought the Spriggan, who was the Spriggan was the, like, only boss in the game. And there were 2 Spriggans in the game, and we didn't get a chance to unlock the second one, unfortunately. But the second one was the same as the first one, except for it had, like, 2 different mechanics. That was it. The boss was just terrible. But if you guys remember, I remember doing... Where is it?
Shit.
All this guy did, they had to turn down the boss because it was so loud. Literally, all it did was run around and do a slam. That's it. It just ran around to the slam. And they had to redo all of the sound because it was completely broken.
I know the sound effects are scuffed. Everybody knows that.
Yeah, it was insane, man. Like, this game needs so much work. It needs so much work with its in-game bosses.
as they're calling it.
Sure.
There were some questions, like specifically I was curious how many bosses they intended to include. Yeah. So it looks like somewhere around 2, at least that's what they've said for this Garden of Genesis. And then we've got some general changes that took place. They've actually introduced their first iteration of Outpost Rush. That's this new 20 vs 20 endgame PvP mode. Not a ton of new details here beyond what we've already learned. It's going to be an attacking and defending team. There's some PvE elements where you can summon creatures, and it's supposed to be, again, it's on a smaller scale than the war system, the faction war system of 50 vs 50. They did say we're going to be getting some more information with the upcoming April patch, so we'll have to stay tuned for that. Great. There was some sort of updates to the main story quest line through levels 40, but I think the biggest...
Bro, when are we going to be able to sail around on a ship? Obviously, New World is built around the idea of sailing across into the New America. And then they originally had like the Indians or Native Americans as like the bad guys, and kind of, and then they had to redo that because people got pissed off about it. And why can't we get sailing around? That's what I want to see. I want to be able to sail around on a fucking ship, on a pirate ship in the 1600s to 1500s. Fuck yeah, dude. I want to be a conquistador. Find some different islands. Be really cool, man. Sea of Thieves? Yeah, no. Games that have sailing and ships automatically are better games. Period. Except PFA.
One of the more interesting things that they've done here is they've said they've added English voiceover for all of the main story quests as well as the starting areas. Now, this is absolutely huge, really. I mean, I'm not going to pretend that I'm going to sit through every line of dialogue necessarily, but I think having voice work in the game,
it's good.
For one, is great for people who love to get into the storytelling and immersion, following this grand narrative in these games. But two, just also like world building. I talked about this in the past after that New World preview event. One thing that the game really felt like it was
this casual. He only has a green staff. Remember how I had all legendaries?
Lacking is like a sense of world filled with inhabitants. Like there are NPCs in the game in these towns, but no one ever said anything. Like NPCs wouldn't greet you and say goodbye when you went to the shops or as you walked by or whatever. And that kind of makes the game world feel a little dead. Hopefully some of this voice work that they're putting in the game actually bleeds in.
I forgot to tell you guys. Do you remember how the first guy that I talked to in New World was like, hey, is that working? That was a dev. And he was genuinely checking to see if the game worked. I found out later that was an actual developer. was really fucking funny.
To just having like NPC chatter, I guess really is what it comes down to.
Yeah.
I would love to see that in New Worlds because I felt like it was something that was severely lacking from that preview event. Okay, so now let's go ahead and move on to the armor and weapon quest. This is actually going to be some new quest chains for players to craft and obtain rare armor and weapons starting at level 40 to kind of give you some sort of gear sets to work towards while you're going through that leveling process. So
they 100% need to do that. Like the gear grind in New World is fucking terrible. Like it's absolutely fucking terrible while you're leveling because you only get new gear every 10 levels. It's so bad. And also another reason why I didn't like it, I'm trying to log in again. Another reason why I didn't like it is that the corruption like areas you were able to farm, this is like a very specific thing, but you were able to buy basically a full set of the equivalent of like the field marshal gear in vanilla WoW by the time that you hit 50, and the cap of the game was 60. So you just made like basically you made these massive, like for example, like they completely changed that. Oh, thank God. That's good.
for the armor quest, these will be unlocking at levels 40, 45, 50,
support
55, and 60. They say these will provide unique recipes with no skill requirement so that players can craft the items after gathering their ingredients. So the light armor quests are going to be found in Weaver's Fen, medium in Cutlass Keys, and heavy in Brightwood. And this armor is going to have set bonuses, granting increased stats depending on the number of pieces equipped. I am curious what this is actually going to mean for those pieces that are unlocked at, say, levels 40 and 45. I'm not entirely sure how this is going to work. Maybe the set bonuses will scale as you level. We'll just have to wait and see. Now, that's the armor quest. There will also be some weapon quests, and these will be similar with no skill requirement, just having you gather materials and forge a weapon. Now, as of now, they said there are quests for a sword, great axe, bow, fire, and life staff. And like the armor, each of these quests will be found in different zones. I like this. I like the idea that they're going to have, besides the stuff.
So I'm going to ask you guys a question, and I'm actually, this is an open-ended question. I don't really know how to feel about it. So there's two different ways you could do things, right? You could do things of like the Diablo 3 way, where, or like not really just Diablo 3, but like Path of Exile way, where you never really get the best item, but you just get continually better items. And so like with New World, you'd just be crafting continually better items. Would you want to have the epitome or the pinnacle of New World armor be through crafting or be through some form of quest line? I feel like, here's what I think. I think that the absolute highest armor in the game shouldn't just come from an on-rails quest. I think that it should come from crafting something with items that you get from like the highest dungeons. And like the quest would just unlock the ability to craft. Like the quest unlocks the base version of the item, and then you can craft that item with more stats and more item or more affixes on it if you do you know, the dungeons or something like that. That'd be cool.
That you randomly find as you're leveling up, or that you get in dungeons or whatever. Having this like progression and these set pieces that you can work towards as you're making your way from levels 1 to the max level of 60. I think that's a good idea. Okay, so we've got some progression changes here next. They said that they decreased the experience required to level from 8 to 60 by 10%. Of course, this means faster leveling, but at the same time, they also decreased the experience gained from PvP faction missions by a range of anywhere from 5% to 18%. So we're getting...
It's way too easy to get to 60. It's way too easy to get to 60. I really hope that New World doesn't go through the same fucking mistake that like WoW does and all these other games do, where it's like, it's not. It depends on... It was nerfed. Oh, so it got nerfed. Alpha was boosted. They changed... Okay. I guess I haven't been keeping up. Okay. I just want there... I just don't... I hate... It's the same thing with the boost, right? Like, the game shouldn't start at level 70 in Burning Crusade. The game doesn't start at level 58. It starts at level 1, man. And you level all the way up. Getting to 60 in New World should be part of the game. It shouldn't just be, oh, you get to you get to 60 so you can play the game. No. The whole game should be relevant. Leveling's boring as fuck? Then play Fortnite. The MMOs should have progression, leveling.
You'd be getting less experience from those PvP quests. Now, if you don't know, the whole idea here with this PvP faction quest system was to try to incentivize people to flag for PvP.
Really bad.
If you flagged for PvP, you would have these specific quests available, and it wouldn't even necessarily say, like, go out and kill players. Sometimes they might, but it would be, you're flagged for PvP, go out there and gather these chests or kill these enemies in this location, come back and do all that without dying while flagged for PvP, and it's a whole risk versus reward, because you risk potentially dying and failing the quest, you would get bonus experience. I don't know, it's a fine line to balance, and you've got two different crowds between the PvP and PvE fans. I enjoy both, and I like that sense of danger that comes with the PvP aspect. If I want to get this faster leveling experience, this more better quest, I'm gonna run that risk of getting killed in the process. I like that, but obviously they're making these fine-tuned adjustments. Just the overall idea, like, I don't love seeing those nerfs to those PvP quests, but it's not the end of the world. Some more changes here. Players killing.
The reason why they did nerfs, like, I don't know, but like I remember in beta they got exploited like crazy, and that's why. But it could be another reason now.
Weaker creatures will now suffer diminishing returns on experience gains. This wasn't the case in the past, so you'd see people like just farming low-level creatures to level up super quickly. That's going to be taking a hit. I think that is a good change. They've done some adjusting to the level range for skull icon enemies. So enemies in the game with skull icons would outright kill a player rather than leaving them at death's door, potentially getting revived. And they would also have increased perception range of 10.
Holy shit, man! How fast does that dude run? Did you see that?
Leaving them at death's door, potentially getting revived. And they would also have increased perception range of 10 meters and would not get staggered. Now, previously, a skull icon would be displayed on an enemy that was 6 levels above a player. Now it's going to be displayed on enemies that are 10 levels above a player.
Just like,
so this gives you a wider range of still actually being able to take on enemies above your level before they just outright destroy you, basically. Moving on, some changes to loot and gear. There is going to be more loot and better loot dropping more often. This is done through a variety of changes. So now weapons will be more likely to drop with attributes actually relevant to that weapon. So this will mean fewer fire staffs that have strength on them, for example.
Yeah, that was
They've increased the chance of items dropping with gem slots. We've also going to be seeing an increase in rare and epic item drops.
They need to increase the scope. They need to increase the scope of what the game really has, though. That's what I don't really like right now, is I feel like the game and the scope of what the game really has to offer is so small. There's not enough special stats or anything like that.
Added additional named items to expeditions, so these will be unique items for each of these dungeons, and they can drop from obviously the bosses, but also the mini bosses and any basic enemies in those dungeons. After level 10, any quest reward containers for armor and weapons are now going to always drop an uncommon or higher item, and large chests will now drop between 2 and 3 items. And with all of this new better gear dropping, they've made it so that all equipable items are now either bind on equip or bind on pickup. Of this, they say that this was an important step to protect the item economy and keep demand for quality items high. I don't disagree with this. Like, but having bind on equip or bind on pickup items, it's pretty standard fare for a lot of MMOs, and I think it's
I think some things should be bind on pickup and bind on equip.
Smart move. Now that there's going to be so many more better items with better stats and higher rarities and these new unique named items, they don't want the market flooded with this stuff. There has to again be a balance of that item economy. Moving on to some gathering and crafting changes. These are kind of not as interesting to me, but I want to point out some of the highlights here. They updated drop rates for rare gathering resources like Fey Iron, so that they're going to be dropping more often and at higher quantities. And with this, they adjusted the crafting requirements for any named items you make. They've also adjusted the refining requirements for precious metals. They've added a new set of crafting modifiers that let you
crafting, I think, is the one thing that New World does pretty much better than any other game that I've seen recently. The crafting in New World is actually fun, and I'm looking forward to it. So basically the idea was that like I told Rich that I'm going to get all the stuff, and Rich is only going to craft stuff. He's not going to do anything except for focus on crafting me gear. That's it. And that's all I want him to do, and it's going to be fucking great.
Apply a specific attribute to items. I really like this. And then some food and buff changes. They've increased the attribute bonuses provided by food, making food better. They've tuned the health recovery food buff to recover more health, but over a longer period. They've adjusted the buff durations on food, potion, and coatings so that higher tiers will last longer. They've also added material converters to the faction shop. So this is going to actually let you convert refining reagents like sandpaper to other refining reagents with a small loss of efficiency. So if you
I would be okay with that as long as it makes sense. Yeah, as long as it makes sense.
you got a ton of sandpaper, but you want more stones or something, I don't know, you can actually do a conversion. You're just going to lose some in the process. But it's pretty cool if you're overwhelmed with one resource and you want some more of another. There was actually quite a few other changes in this section, but again, I don't find a lot of this stuff super interesting. So if you want like the specifics, check out the actual patch notes in the link below. Next up, there were some fishing changes. They've polished the fishing quest objectives and improved the rewards. They've also included new fishing armor with new perks and specialty fishing poles. Pretty cool for the fishing fans out there. Next up, some user interface adjustments here. They made improvements to the inventory screen, changing.
Let's see that. Okay. I'd say that's probably better than it was. This actually looks good. Like, I can't see anybody who'd look at this and be like, oh, this sucks. This inventory screen sucks. I think this is good.
Its overall presentation. So they added a full character view for players to get to actually visually inspect their loadouts while they're looking at their inventory. They improved the layout for a more convenient drag and drop system. They've also adjusted and updated all of the icons to have a single size grid square, so just to give a more compact format. And they made it easier to see the threshold amounts on your equipment load, which, you know, lets you decide if the armor that you're wearing puts you in the light, medium, or heavy category. I really like the way that this thing looks compared to the old inventory system. Really, I like inventories that will show your character as you like swap armor and stuff. I just think this looks slick and a lot better than what they've had in the past.
This is what it used to be right here, and it was okay. Like, I never thought the New World, I never thought it was terrible, but like, this is obviously not that great.
All right, so the next big section here is changes that are taking place to the combat, attribute points,
this is what I care about.
Armor, and equipment
combat matters a lot.
So let's get into this. First off, there was another AI combat update. This is actually part 3 of the combat overhaul. They're just continuing to tune and refine the game's existing AI. They say that now actually potions are going to have cooldown timers. These will be shared amongst the types, so any health, mana, or regeneration potions will have individual cooldowns for each type, and drinking a potion is now actually considerably faster, that animation, and is no longer going to slow you down while you're moving. They've also
another thing that I don't like about this game is like some mobs, like I have to make more mouse movements in New World to hit some of the NPCs in the game than I do in Overwatch to try to hit a tracer. It's fucking insane. They're like, just chill out.
Changes to the default block angle. It is now a frontal 180 degrees. The previous angle was 90 degrees. So now the blocking degrees is twice as much, and they've updated the functionality on melee attacks to make it more consistent if you're hitting enemies that are shorter than you, or any enemies that are above or below you on an incline, just resulting in fewer misses. That's one of those things that can actually kind of play into the combat feeling inconsistent or clunky even. Just trying to tune up and make combat and attacking more reliable. That's a good change. So now
I actually feel like staggering in the game really kind of felt like shit to me too, personally. I never like staggering in a lot of these games if it's happening like very regularly, because it just makes me feel like I lose control of my character, and it was nerfed. Great. Yeah, Axe Perma Stun is a good example.
On to the attribute rework. They've increased the amount of damage scaling per attribute point invested. They say that they want players to invest in the appropriate attribute to use weapons efficiently. With this, they've tuned the Constitution attribute so that the percentage of increased health is going to be generally equal to the new damage increases. They've also adjusted the way dual attribute weapons will scale to try to make them more competitive with single attribute weapons. This is going to hopefully offer some more build flexibility. There were also some armor changes. Physical and elemental armor ratings will now be scaling consistently across the armor classes.
I haven't seen that
this is going to
before.
mean that heavy armor now has the highest armor rating for both physical and elemental damage, while light armor has the lowest. Each weight class of armor will have 3 different types of armor distribution: physical focused, elemental focused, or a balance between the two. And with these armor changes, they've also significantly reduced the amount of armor that's provided by shields, while also standardizing the weight of shields across tiers. All of this also plays into how the equipment loadout is going to be adjusted. So they say here that they want each equipment load to have a unique role and strengths, so they've made some major changes to how equipment load works. So for light and medium equipment loads, you will now get a damage bonus, 20% for light and 10% for medium. Medium and heavy equipment loads will now also get a bonus to their stuns, slows, and roots, 10% for medium and 20% for heavy. They've also then, with this, removed the accuracy, grit, damage resist, and stamina modifiers that were previously on those equipment load tiers. They've reduced the block stability bonus for heavy equipment loads from 35 to 25%. They've also increased the stamina cost for light and heavy equipment loads dodge from 40 to 50. So as you can see,
that's good. Dodge wasn't really worth it for a lot of cases. I think that's a good idea. Yeah, just rebalancing things is really important. I feel like the preview really put it in front of so many people, especially like I remember when I was playing the preview, I had like 80, 90,000 viewers or some shit like that. I think it was like 80,000 viewers at one point. And a lot of people saw that fucking game. A lot of people saw that game. And I'm glad that they're listening to the feedback. It genuinely feels like they're trying to make the game better.
Have completely changed how the equipment load system works, along with those armor changes and those attribute rework changes. I mean, those are some fundamental overhauls to a lot of these systems.
Yeah.
And this isn't the only thing that's seeing such sweeping overhauls. So there has been major updates to every weapon to continue to push the ability differentiation by giving each ability a clear primary focus. And I can't stress just like how much is changing here. I'm actually not going to read each and every one of these weapon changes because there are literally 10 pages of notes of weapon changes. Every single weapon has gotten massive changes. Let me just give you one example. Okay, so for the spear, they've removed potent thrust, defensive adjustment, invigorating kills, and refreshing bloodlust. Those passives are gone. With this, they've added refreshing reach, precise jabs, invigorating crits, evasive maneuvers, defensive stance, strong conditioning, crippling jabs, aggressive maneuvers, and exposed wounds passives. They've reduced the pushback on light and heavy attacks. They've reduced the delay between attacks in the light attack chain. They've standardized the pushback distance between regular heavy and fully charged heavy attacks. Deadly reach now increases critical chance by 10% instead of increasing its damage. And there were numerous changes to the ability Cyclone, Perforate, Skewer, and Vault Kick, which I would read line by line, but holy crap, this is absolutely bananas. And they've made similar changes again.
That's good, because I remember the musket was dog shit. Like, I thought the musket was terrible next to the bow. Like, you could see, like, there were, like, tiny little, maybe you could use it in this one case. It was, like, dude, the bow, I remember I was playing the game. After playing with every single weapon, the bow is the best weapon in the game. It's the best weapon in the game, and it's not even close either. Like, there are a few attacks that they have. The bow is just fucking insane. The shotgun,
and every other weapon. Good. These are drastic overhauls for most of these. I mean, I'm going to give you a link to those patch notes below, but reading through each of these would add like 20 more minutes to this video, and it's already long enough. So no, I'm absolutely not going to do that.
See how I play with the bow.
But also, I think it's worth saying that odds are there will continue to be further adjustments. So a lot of these changes that are here right now are going to be tuned and maybe reversed. Like, things will continue to change between now and the time that most of us actually get to play the game again. But if you are curious about all of those nitty-gritty details, the fine-tune adjustments, check that link in the description below. It's crazy. One of the biggest things too, I mean, like light staff, they completely removed that speed of light, that blink ability.
Thank God. That was so cool, but it was just, it made it necessary. Like, you had to have this. Whoa! 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 Remember that? I actually think that was a pretty good one, wasn't it? It's exactly what it sounded like. It was fun. It was fun, but it was so good that it directed gameplay. And at that point, I think it's a problem.
That everyone was obsessed with using. That thing is literally gone. There's just so many changes. It's really crazy. Combat, the weapons, the way armor works, equipment.
I hope they make guilds, because you can have bigger guilds, like companies, or they're called companies in New World. I hope they make them larger than 100 players. Like 100 players? What the fuck? Like, at least give us 1,000 slots. Like, I would love to see larger guilds, so I can at least make, you know, a stream guild.
Loads, the way attribute points work, they're changing so damn much. So yes, there you go. Once again, another massive update for New Worlds, and I gotta hand it to them. I was not expecting this. Like, when they first delayed the game from its initial release in May 2020 and then pushed it back to August, and then
I actually was expecting this. I know that might sound weird and you guys might not believe me, but the reason why I was expecting this is we talked to one of the developers. He said the things that I wanted to hear. And he said it in a way that was different than you can tell. You can tell whenever they're bullshitting around. But he said it in a way that I really believed it. And I'm glad to see it seems to be the case. I just got a notification you went live. Yeah, I just started my stream, man.
August, they said, you know what, we need more time to add more content. And specifically, when that preview event happened, they were like, man, there's a lot that people are wanting from this game that just isn't in it. But I wasn't sure realistically how much they were going to do. Like, I knew that we were getting new zones coming. I figured that they might add some new enemies and new weapons, but they've continued to do so much. Like, month after month, we continue to get these big updates. We've got these new PvP systems, the inclusion of dungeons. We know about 2. There's likely more coming. We've been getting a bunch of new enemies and new weapons added to the game. And then all of these balance adjustments. The fact that, like, every weapon in the game has just got a complete overhaul. Yeah, it's bananas. It's crazy. And we still have some months to come. There's 5 months. We've been getting updates every month. There's 5 more months until the launch. And in this time, I fully expect we're going to hear about more expeditions or dungeons. We're probably going to be getting more details on Outpost Rush, as well as the different locations and actually how it's going to.
I actually have very minimal excitement for a BG in New World. I have very minimal excitement for it. I don't really care a whole lot. I want to see better PvE content and more important PvP content.
Function. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe we got another end game zone. I think it's absolutely possible that more weapons and enemy types are added to the game. I just don't know what else to say other than wow, like exceeding my expectations. And no, I'm not trying to jump on the hype train here or anything. I just the literal definition of the phrase. My expectations have been exceeded. I was not expecting this. I don't know why. There's nothing else to say, literally. So there you go. I'm looking forward to hearing about these continuous updates. I will keeping you guys afloat with these changes as they come through and as I find them worth talking about. There was so much here. I didn't even like go line by line of this update. There's so much more that I barely scratched or didn't even go into the fine details. Check that link below if you want to read through all of that. It's a lot, but I'm looking forward to hearing more. I'm looking forward really to actually getting my hands on the game again and playing that beta that's going to be happening in July. Hopefully they hit this release of August 2021. It's their 4th attempt at releasing the game, but I actually think this one's looking good, right? It's not going to be August.
This one's going to be different. Guys, this one's going to be different.
2022, is it? Let's hope not. All right, thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time, all right? Take it easy.
All right, that was a good video. I liked it. It was good. He's bagging it. So that was, let me see here. Getting more hype for this game as time goes on. Yeah, I am too. I'm very excited.